So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Term 4. I hope everyone is doing well. I begin today by acknowledging that I am hosting this event from the lands of the Wadawurrung people, the traditional custodians. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which each of you are living, learning and working from today. I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. I'd like to hand over to Sue, who is going to introduce Greg.
Thanks, Kathleen. Welcome, everybody. I know, what a big ask this is for us all to manage to scramble to our chairs at 4:30 on a Monday in week 2 in our busy lives. But I think the fact there's so many people interested in our Facebook page, we're up over 600, I think now, Kathleen, I noticed on the weekend, shows that level of interest and how much, we love learning and sharing from each other. And really warm welcome to Greg. Again, that I just said while I was chatting to that acknowledgement that he's a principal in lockdown and how demanding his role is, but also that generosity of spirit, which is in our kind of love of literacy community, and happy to share his own journey and his school's journey, and we appreciate that enormously. We really kind of chose to have Greg at this time strategically because we're all planning next year, and so it's good to be thinking about things now and thinking about what we want to implement and where we might go. And Greg's just in that great position where unlike Sarah Soam that we just talked about, who's a long way down the journey, and sometimes I think then you can't remember how you started. It's all pretty recent for Greg, and particularly in his new school. So there's a real kind of roadmap there to follow. So we're really excited to hear from you, Greg. And I know you're very keen to answer lots of questions at the end. So I really encourage everybody to take advantage of that. Pop those questions in the chat and ask Greg while we've got him here, whether that's, where should I start, or this is where we're up to now and I don't know what to do, don't know where to go next. And they've got some really good student learning results too, which is really exciting for us to see. So Greg, I will hand over to you. Thank you so much.
No worries, thank you. I'll just share my screen. Is that on your screen now? I assume you can see that? Yeah. As you were saying, so we probably started our Science of Reading journey term 3 last year. So probably been going 5 terms. I guess 3 of those terms now have been in remote learning. So not as much progress as we think could have happened, but we've still, as you'll see, I'll share some of the data, but how far we've come in such a short space of time. I've tried to make this presentation different to other ones I've done. So I've done quite a few, and I wanted to make this one look a bit different for you guys and just cover some things that might benefit you going into next year, rather than just looking at the data and why we made this change. I think once you start looking at the science of reading, it's obvious why you start to make these changes. The first thing I thought I'd show you is something called the 5 monkeys experiment. I don't know if anyone here has seen that before. But it's an experiment that sort of it looks at organizational culture, and you might recognize some staff members at your school from these monkeys too. So the way it works is there's 5 monkeys are placed in a cage as part of an experiment. In the middle of the cage is a ladder with bananas on the top rung. Every time a monkey tried to climb up the ladder, the experimenter sprayed all the monkeys with icy, freezing cold water. Eventually, each time a monkey started to climb the ladder, the other ones would pull him down from the ladder and beat him up so they could avoid the icy cold spray. Soon, no monkeys dared go up the ladder. The experimenter then substituted one of the monkeys in the cage for a new monkey. The first thing the new monkey did was try to climb the ladder to reach the bananas. After several beatings, the new monkey learned the social norm. He never knew why the other monkeys wouldn't let him go for the bananas, because he'd never been sprayed with icy water, but he quickly learned that this behavior would not be tolerated by the other monkeys. One by one, each of the monkeys in the cage is substituted for a new one until none of the original group remained. Every time a new monkey went up the ladder, the rest of the group pulled him down, even those who had never been sprayed with the icy water. By the end of the experiment, the 5 monkeys in the cage had learned to follow the rule, don't go for the bananas, without any of them knowing why. If we could have asked the monkeys for their rationale behind not letting their cage mates climb the ladder, their answer would probably be, I don't know, it's just something that's always been done. This story, whether it's true or not, captures a pervasive theme in many organisational cultures and possibly in schools, especially around the science of reading. We tend to do things the way we've been told or the way they've always been done, without questioning or revisiting the reason behind it, even long after that reason ceases to exist. So if you start to feel like the caged monkeys in this story, there's some advice from this that relates to organisational culture, that next time someone tells you that's not how we do things, ask them why. If they can't tell you, you can tell them about the 5 monkeys. Me getting buy-in for the leadership, people in leadership who are in here, the things that we did originally, and again, I'm at a school just like yours. We have the same sort of staff, people who are resistant to change, people who really want to change, and everything in between. So what we started with was just sharing our data with all stakeholders. We did a phonics check on all of the kids in the whole school, prep to 6, and then we shared that data with staff, with school council, with our parents through the newsletter. We found exemplar schools in our area, and you'll be able to do that as well in Ballarat. For us, it was Bentley West, Chelsea and Brandon Park. They were within 15 minutes of us. And so the best thing to do is, as a leadership team, go and visit them, ask all the questions that you have a look at classrooms in action. And then once you've seen that, encourage staff to visit as part of I know we don't get PPD days anymore, but release staff out, especially the junior team to start with, to go and see what's happening in other schools. Sometimes you only know what's in your school. And then one of the most important things is providing the professional learning, and that can be through set readings for the staff, but making sure you're providing professional learning for your staff, pay for staff to complete courses and PD, and it's the best investment you'll make is the PD side. And then you're going to spend money on resources too. So you can have all the best resources in the world, but if your staff don't understand why we're doing this, or the theory and the research behind phonological awareness, how that's a starting point for kids to learn to read, if you don't understand that, but you're doing Hegarty just because you've been told to, it doesn't have that same effect. And then purchase textbooks for your staff. So we are up to the writing revolution now in our journey and linking that to comprehension. So that's probably the 9th stage of our journey. So all staff have just had the writing revolution purchased for them. But there's also other textbooks for Reading for Life, the Knowledge Gap, that you can also purchase depending on the stage you're at. For a teacher, so I'm trying to pitch this to everyone in here. If there's teachers in here who perhaps don't have the buy-in of leadership, but still want to take this journey themselves, again, see if you can go and visit other schools in your area and observe and talk with the teachers. So after you finish watching what they're doing, ask them the rationale behind certain things you saw. If you're a teacher going it alone, say a prep teacher, collect pre-data before you start. So get where your kids are at with their phonics knowledge or phonemic awareness knowledge and track that, keep that data. Then trial using the tier 2 and tier 3 budget options, which I'll talk about later on in this presentation. So the tiers I sort of have created for this presentation. So you've got tier 1 will be for big schools with a big budget. Tier 2 would be for small schools, which is like my school. And then tier 3 would be freebies or really cheap options for classroom teachers going it alone. So try those the tier 2 and tier 3 budget options yourself. Use with fidelity. Send decodable books home. We tend to not send anything less than level 9 PM, or what would that be? Fontes and Panel, like a F. So we don't send anything less than that home because they're too predictable, and we get the parents to read them. And there's also non-fiction books coming about this time. So we get the parents to read the PM or Fontes and Panel if you've invested that money to the kids, but the students are reading decodables at home. Ask for feedback from students and parents, which you can present to the leadership team. share what you've done in your classroom then with your prep team and encourage them to trial what you've done. Then get your post data and compare that to your pre-data, make it into graphs, whatever you have to do, and then take that to the leadership team and then just keep pushing for change. As a leader, I'm interested in this. I'm motivated by this, and it's a passion of mine now. I was always a maths person, but getting into this has really brought out my passion for literacy. Not every principal is going to have that same passion. So you really need to find a way in with your principal that's going to get them to take a look at this and try it. And I guess the best place to try is in the junior school. So looking at our own journey at Clayton South Primary School, we've probably taken about 9 different stages through this 12 to 18 months. So the first thing we did was introduce phonological awareness in foundation to year 2, and we used Heggerty. So we purchased the Heggerty books. We did that prep, year 1 and year 2, and we stopped it there. The second thing we did was pick a phonics scope and sequence. We picked Little Learners Love Literacy, and we used that prep to 1. And then we looked at extended code from year 2 onwards, and we found that most of our kids all the way up to grade 6 had major gaps in even our prep scope and sequence. So we, across the school, went back and taught all of the different sounds right across the school to start again. And if you've seen any of my other presentations, our prep year 1, year 2 data is so much higher than our year 6 data. So those kids have had that right from the start. We had much less gaps to fill than our seniors. We then purchased decodable books. We've got Little Learners Love Literacy and Decodable Readers Australia that we have at school and for send home books. Then our year 3 to 6 teachers started to ask, so probably term 4 in our first year, the year 3 to 6 teachers started to ask, what can we do? How can we get on this journey too? So we started from the same spot we started with the preps, with the Phonemic Awareness. We did that for year 3 to 6, and we found Kilpatrick's Equipped Reading Success book, and we used that as a starting base. And he's got 1-minute activities linked to each of the sections on the past assessment, which I'll go through as well. But we do that. It takes 1 minute per activity, hence the name. We might do 2 to 3 each day with the kids based on where the gaps are in that class. So that was the next step we took. We got decodable books for our senior kids because the junior type ones from Little Learners and decodable readers, they're not something our senior kids wanted to be reading. They're probably more babyish for them. So we got decodable books for the 3 to 6s like Moondog, Talisman, Totem series. These are chapter books, but they still follow the same sequences as the junior books, but they are more interesting and high interest sort of topics for your boys or your higher students. Then we looked at fluency pairs. We probably started this one term 1 this year, and we did this across the whole school at once. So our preps had word lists, decodable word lists that they would read through for a minute with their partner and then mark off where they got to. We had sentences for our year 1s and 2s, and then we had passages for our 3 to 6s that they would read for probably 3 or 4 minutes. It was all timed to their partner marks down their errors, they talk about them, and they swap over. So that's probably 5 or 6 minutes every day. Then we introduced Spelling Mastery this year. So it's a direct instruction program. At first, when we brought this in, if you're not familiar with it, it's very scripted. And our teachers were a bit shocked and confronted with how scripted it is and how it runs. We're a bit worried about how the kids would cope with that. But if you ask the kids, it's their favourite thing that they do now every day is go to their Spelling Mastery group, do their lesson, and then come back to class. They all love it. If we say we're not doing it for a day, the kids are upset. We do it straight after recess every day, so they line up in their spelling groups, and if we come out and they see us coming out, they know it's not on, they're all upset. So it is something that we've brought in and they love doing. But as I said, it was confronting to some of the staff who'd been there a long time and having to read from a script, but it covers morphemes and spelling rules and all the things that our teachers probably didn't feel comfortable teaching themselves and have the knowledge of. So it covers it all exactly how it should be taught. It goes from levels A to F. We this year did it from grades 3 to 6, and the kids varied from group A all the way to F, just in those 3-year, 4-year levels. Next year, we're going to have group A for all of our year 1s, group B for all of our year 2s, and so on, and we'll just flow through the school. The next thing we did was look at vocabulary instruction, explicit vocabulary instruction, and we linked it to morphology, and we also linked it to our comprehension lessons that we were doing, which is where we're up to now. So we do comprehension through knowledge building, and it's linked to the writing revolution. To link it to the knowledge building, we use PowerPoints linked to picture books that the teacher reads the picture storybooks to the kids. We do explicit teaching of the vocabulary in that book, and then we ask comprehension questions, and we focus on a different part of the book every time we read it. So we'll do that for a week. Or the other alternative is we use the core knowledge curriculum. And so, for instance, in prep, their topics are kings and queens. We might look at kings and queens for 2 weeks, and they're all higher level readings the teacher reads to the students. And then there's comprehension linked to what they're doing. And then we link our writing lesson to the knowledge they've now got about kings and queens using the writing revolution. They've also got topics like fairy tales, farms, healthy eating, 5 senses. There's lots of different topics. So that's also free, the core knowledge curriculum. And we got that idea through visiting Bentley West. So that's where we're at. We also, this is just our context. So you do this to suit your own context, but we change the flow of our day as well. So next year, rather than 5 60-minute blocks, we're changing to 6 50-minute blocks, which will give us 5 extra sessions a week, which we're then going to use for extra literacy sessions as well, which I'll go through and show you what's in that. So for our first thing in the morning, it's a skills literacy block. So we look at all those things in the big 5 or the big 6. We have our daily review for about 15 minutes, which covers all these things I'm about to mention. We have phonemic awareness through, so this is for a prep class through Heggerty, which is about 8 minutes. Phonics, 15 minutes, and it includes the explicit teaching of a new phoneme grapheme correspondence, includes dictation, decodable reading, whatever you can get through in a 15-minute block. There's other ideas as well that you can use. Morphology, so in prep, we've got a scope and sequence for morphology starting from prep, so they'll learn some prefixes and suffixes. I think they do re and un in prep, and then the plural, adding an S and ES, and ING and ED in prep as well. So we cover those things in that time. Fluency pairs, so there's 6-minute fluency pairs, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then explicit teaching of new high frequency words for 6 minutes, Tuesday, Thursday. So all of this then gets covered in the daily review each day as well. So we're not just teaching high frequency words 2 days a week, we're teaching them, explicitly teaching 2 days worth of new ones, and then revisiting them every day in our daily review. So that's our skills literacy block. Then in our next session, this is where we build the background knowledge for the students. So we either do our book study, which I was talking about before, and within literal and inferential questions. And then we have writing instruction linked to that from the writing revolution. So we look at in prep, we look at fragments, sentences, building a sentence. And then so that's 1 week. The other option that we do is interspersed in there is the core knowledge curriculum. As again, the same topics, so farms, kings and queens, fairy tales, they're all about 2 to 3 weeks each. We're also creating our own topics for next year as well. So we'll have a First Nations topic, we'll have other things that we think the prep should know, because the core knowledge curriculum is very American. So we've taken out some of their topics and we're going to make our own link to us. And again, we follow the writing revolution linked to that as well. And then after lunch, for this new session that we've got, we look at writing genres. We do our spelling mastery lesson in there, which is about 15 minutes. We've got explicit handwriting instruction and then grammar as well in that last session too. So this is an extra one that we haven't had before. some of our data just to share here. So this is our phonemic awareness from Hegarty. You can see across the top the different parts that it covers, so rhyme recognition, rhyme production, onset fluency, and so on. This was the data on the first day of prep, so not the very first day, but towards the very start of prep, and their scores. So we've got a lot of red, and as you'd expect, a lot of red towards the right. They're the harder areas to cover, like substituting, blending, segmenting. And then the next slide, I'll go back and forth to see the difference, but this was end of term 2. So it's still got that lots of red, but you can see parts that were orange are now turned green, and there's a lot less red there. So we would hope that we didn't have the kids in term 2, but assessing term 3 would then, a lot of that red would either be orange or green, and then by the end of the year, majority of that would be green. That would be the hope for us. We'll assess them again when they come back to school at the end of the year, and we can compare it against this data. So this is prep Hegarty, and there's year 1 Hegarty as well. The next thing we're going to do for next year is we're going to use Kilpatrick's past assessment just for year 2. And then beyond year 2, it'll just be for intervention. So this is our data from year 3-4 doing the past assessment. Just move this thing. So at the top, you'll see the syllable levels, onset rhyme levels, phoneme levels, and advanced phoneme level. And these are all linked to the 1-minute activities. The green, number 1, is what they got first. They knew these things first time we did the assessment. The red was the ones they got wrong. And the darker green, number 2, is they got it wrong previously and now it's correct in term 2 when we reassessed. We didn't want to just turn them into 1s so you couldn't track the growth. This for us just shows the growth of the students so that we can see all of those dark green ones were red previously. So there's only probably 8 or 9 students now that have made any errors on the past assessment in year 3-4. And we would hope that by doing the 1-minute activities, which we've done every day, that would, and then they have tutoring as well, would bring those kids up to scratch. So if we did this in year 2, we would think that very few kids would need this beyond grade 2. Sorry, it's clicking. This one is our fluency from the Divels assessment, or Dibbles, I don't know how you even say it, but from that assessment. The blue is well ahead. Green is kind of where we'd want them to be. Yellow might need tier 2 intervention, a little bit lower than expected for the year level. And the red is highly at risk, and they are the students we chose for our tutoring program. Looking from term 1 to term 2, some kids have gone backwards just based on the text. They only get one chance to read it. Others have made quite a bit of growth. The expected level for words per minute does change from term 1 to term 2. So it's a beginning assessment and a middle of year assessment. So some kids, a certain score would be green the first in term 1, but then it's not green in term 2. But we've got in year 6, you can see we've got 2 students there that had 78 words per minute and 74, and now reading at 96 and 90 from the middle of the year. Still somewhat at risk, but made really good growth. You can see in year 5, 1 student's gone from the yellow to the green. In year 4, they haven't necessarily changed colour, the red ones, but made some growth. And then in year 3, we've got kids who have gone from 36 words per minute to 82, 34 to 80, 26 to 83. So they're still in the red, but they've made such big growth. And what the tutor did was actually show that growth to the students as they were going. So we'd enter in their word count per minute because they were doing lots of progress monitoring during the tutoring sessions, and they could see the growth they were making as they were making that. So that's something we're really proud of, this data, just to get all the kids caught up. This has just been released. This is our NAPLAN data. The biggest thing for me that stands out is the fact that we're not leaving any students behind here. So if you have a look, this is for reading. The black is bottom 2 bands. And if you look back to the far left at 2016, we had 47% of students bottom 2 bands, so almost half of our year 3 cohort. 2017, a third of the cohort were bottom two bands. 2018, a third of the cohort. And now in 2021, we had one student bottom two bands. So for us, it was just saying to us, this is working. We're not leaving any students behind now, whereas we had half the cohort left behind previously. And the same data looks exactly the same for everything else. So writing, 35% bottom two bands, 27, 25, and then get to this year, again, one student. And I'm fairly sure that student was exempt. I think it's got bottom two bands and exempt. That student, I think, was exempt from the NAPLAN test. But again, bringing everybody up, we've got our highest amount of students in top two bands, 76%. So we'd had a lot of naysayers saying, yes, you're bringing up all the low kids, but you're halting the progress of your top kids. And it's obviously showing that it's not doing that. We're getting more kids into those top two bands. And then for spelling as well, another same story, 47% bottom two bands, 33, 25, and then 12% this year. So that's again, two students in the bottom two bands, and 65%, which is our highest, you can see on this graph, in the top two bands. So again, bringing everyone along for the ride, which is what we want to stand for at our school, that we're not leaving any students behind. And I think that graph just really shows that. In terms of professional development, upskilling the staff is the best and most efficient way to make some changes in your school. So you've really got to, what I did was get the staff to do their own projects. We're in remote learning when we started this journey. So I gave 2 teachers fluency, 2 teachers phonemic awareness, 2 teachers phonics. I said, go away, look at the 5 from 5 website, do as much reading as you can, make a PowerPoint presentation for the rest of staff explaining the theory, the research, what it is, and then activities they can do from tomorrow in their classroom. And that's where we got a lot of our ideas, and a lot of our buy-in was from staff themselves. We've got staff who are doing the solar course through La Trobe Uni. There's a beginner course and an intermediate course there. We did the morphology course, word crackers, through Bill Hansbury. We did the phonics, so all staff have done the Little Learners Love Literacy 2-day course. Some did it on site and others did it online. And we've got 2 staff currently doing the Sounds Right course, and they're our tutors for next year. We had Amina McLean come out and do a vocabulary whole day PD for us, which was fantastic. We had the Spelling Mastery whole day PD as well. And there's a big list of PD on the Reading Science in Schools Facebook page. So I'm assuming most people would be on that by now, but if you're not, jump on there. And there's a list of PD for all the different areas of science of reading, and you just click in. Most of it will be free. It's just videos that you can watch or readings to do. This is where I sort of put together options for schools. So the 3 tiers. So tier 1, cashed up, want to purchase a program, get it into your school straight away. Obviously, don't forego the training. You really need all the professional development you can get with all of this. And then tier 2, schools on a budget, my specialty, small schools. I've always found a way to get the things we need on a budget. And then tier 3, freebies. So these are for individual teachers going it alone. They really want to get this and teach the way their kids need to learn to read, but don't have the backing. So if you want to go it alone on the sly, you didn't hear it from me, but these are sort of some options for you. So with phonological and phonemic awareness, tier 1 would be your Hegarty. It's $165 for the book. It's covered from preschool. So we actually bought the kindergarten next door, the kindergarten copy of the book, to encourage them to send their kids to us next year. It goes through to year 2 and beyond. We just use it for prep and 1. And then you would need 1 book per class because it's a script. It's got 35 weeks of script and it's every day. And it probably starts off, it might take you 15 minutes, but we get it down to about 8 now. And you can chop out sections when your kids are really good at it too. So that's probably your tier 1, a bit more expensive. Tier 2, Kilpatrick's equipped for reading success. So that cost us $102 for the book, but you would only need 1 copy because there's a chapter on 1-minute activities, and you would just make copies of that and distribute that to your grade 2 and beyond teachers. Yeah, so we use it from year 2, and it can be used for intervention for years 3 to 6. And again, it only takes 1 minute, very short and sharp activities, and the kids really enjoy it. The grade 6s have been using it, and they've been calling me down to the classroom to challenge me. They've got me asking them questions to try and trick them. There's a level N, which we didn't use, and that's doing the sounds backwards. So the word can would be knack, and the kids begged me to test them on that because they swore they could do it, and they could all do it perfectly, every single student. So they've pretty much clocked this thing in grade 6, but we would hope to have our year 2s doing this, and then it's only for intervention beyond there, but they really enjoy doing it. And then for tier 3, there is so much stuff on Teachers Pay Teachers. A lot of it is free. There's other websites as well. If you just type in Phonemic Awareness, you could use that every day as part of your daily review. You could teach it yourself as a whole class activity. You could create your own data tracking spreadsheets to see how the kids are going, and then provide intervention where needed. But you can definitely do this for free. But there are options if it's for a whole school and you want to get it going through the school. But as an individual teacher, there are options for you. For phonics, to spend a bit more money, you might go into Little Learners Love Literacy or Decodable Readers Australia, which we've chosen, or Sounds Right. Ensure all staff complete the professional learning or the course, follow with fidelity, provide the training and coaching for all staff, model, observe and retrain where necessary. So we've sent several staff twice to Little Learners 2-day course, and every time they've gone, they've learned something different. And that was $400 per staff member for the 2-day course. And then Sounds Right, we've got 2 staff who are our tutors doing Sounds Right course. That's $800 per person. So you've got spending a little bit more money on those ones. The tier 2 will be the Solar course. Again, it goes over 4 weeks for the beginner and 5 weeks for intermediate, I believe. It's $240 per person. So again, it's one that an individual could afford themselves, or if you want to put the whole school through a bit cheaper in a small school, again, that's another option. And just again, model, observe, retrain as you go. Freebie, SA spelled. I've put the websites there, and I'm happy to share these slides with you afterwards, Kathleen. So they've got free online courses. They've got a free scope and sequence and free decodable books. I'll put the links. There's no cost for the books, and most courses are free. The decodable books are in PDF format, so you can use them up on your TV screen. And when last remote learning, all of the staff selected, this is before the tutoring came out, but each of us selected 3 students who were well behind, and we tutored them every day over remote learning over the computer. We were able to share our screen and use these books with those kids. Or it can be printed as well and made into hard copy booklets. So for a teacher going it alone, you can't afford to buy a set of books. These can be printed, stapled, sent home. So that was another option. With Fluency, the more expensive one, I didn't actually get a price for this because we didn't think it would suit us, but what it does is for Diabells, it's their automated management system, and it records the kids' read, and it automatically marks where they are and analyzes the data, puts it into graphs. Very, very easy, but I imagine expensive. The next one, which we're doing next year, is $1 per student. There's a $200 sign-up fee as well. This one, you enter it in manually, but it then creates the graphs and everything for you. So again, very simple for $1 per student across the school. And what we've been doing, and this is free, so you can easily do this as well, is you need to create your own spreadsheets to record the data, but we've already done that, so I'm happy to share that. But it's also lots of schools have already created their spreadsheets too. But again, enables you to analyze your student data, create the graphs, and again, very easy way to have a look at who needs tier 3 intervention at a glance. And then 1-minute activities as well. If you don't know about Diabells, all the assessments take 1 minute. So why on earth you would be doing PM or Fontes and Pinnell benchmarks that take up to 20 minutes when you could do a 1-minute screener? Intervention that we use, so we use the Tutor Learning Initiative. We focus on the skills lacking for each student. They're 20 to 30 minutes 3 times a week, one-on-one for the most part, but we do have some one-on with 3 grouped by their skills. We try to utilise experts. We've just hired a speech pathologist who's going to train up our tutors, but also work with students for Tier 3 intervention. We have a designated tutor space. We've just built a lab. We just gutted a room, made it a tutoring lab, and we've got 3 tutors next year. And just upskilling the tutors, make sure that they've got all this knowledge and they've done courses, and then track and monitor progress every 2 to 3 weeks. So you really want to be doing your progress monitoring regularly to check that what you're doing is working. So for a tutoring session, what ours kind of look like would be the 1-minute activities from Kilpatrick. So you might choose if their first errors were at level G, we'd start there and just do a few of the 1-minute activities. We review previously taught phoneme grapheme correspondences. We explicitly teach new ones they don't know. They do fluency reads. So what our tutors did this year was we would get the student to read for 1 minute their passage. You would then correct any errors that they made in that reading, and then model for one minute how it should sound read fluently. Then the student has another go, and theoretically they'll get further than they did the first time because they've read it before. You mark down where they got to, correct any more errors, and then the third time they read it. What we did then was average out their correct words per minute and put it into a graph. The kids had a look at that and they could see it slowly going up over time. We then look at high frequency words review. They read a decodable text at their level, which you would get from the teacher, but if you've been working with them as the tutor for a while, you'd know where they're up to. And then comprehension questions linked to the book they've read. So that's what a tutoring session kind of looks like for us. With your scope and sequences, we as a leadership team created these ones. So based on the writing revolution, we've got a syntax, sentence, grammar, punctuation, scope and sequence across the school. We've got a phonics and extended code scope and sequence from Prep to 2. We have a morphology scope and sequence, which is in the next slide I'll share with you, from Prep to 6. We've got a vocabulary one based on the core knowledge curriculum and the picture books that we've chosen, so we know which words we're explicitly teaching. And then we've got phonemic awareness scope and sequence, comes directly from Peggotty and past. Writing text type scope and sequence, and high frequency word scope and sequence. So we've got all these ready to go for next year so that the teachers will have a weekly plan all the way through. So for our morphology scope and sequence, it's all on one page, and then the teachers would then work out how they want to teach this week by week. So you can see from Prep, they're doing 2 prefixes, un and re, and we explicitly teach them the meanings, go through words. So if un means not, if it's not real, unreal. What would unhappy be? Not happy. So we go through the kids explicitly teaching like that. We've got 3 suffixes that they're doing. So for the plural, and then adding ing and ed. And then we start root words in year 2. And so they start learning root words from year 2 to year 5. Year 6 will be covering, and they obviously when they do year 2, they're also doing their prep and the year 1 and the year 2 words. And then year 6 we revise, and then you would just incorporate new ones that you're learning as you go. So our year 6 teacher's been experimenting with the etymology and everything, and he's really enjoying that, and he's constantly coming up to me and telling me words he's learned. So I know if he's getting into it, the kids will be getting into it, because as we know, the more passionate you are, the kids will enjoy that thing too. So he's really into learning new words and constantly telling me all the things he's learned. Yeah, so that's our scope and sequence for that, and then the teachers would then put them into their planners themselves. That's me. So I hope that was all right. It was hard to know how to pitch that towards everyone, but.
Greg, I'm just, while we wait for some questions to pop up into the chat, because that was a lot you covered there, and I know you created that just for today, so I really appreciate that. Just backtrack a little bit and just tell us, because you briefly touched on the fact that maths was your love. Yeah. What got you started on this?
At my previous school, Bolinda Primary School, so in the northwest region, sort of near Sunbury, I was a teaching principal, and maths was fine. We had so many kids with dyslexia, and I did not know what to do at all. And being the teacher of the class and the principal, I just felt like this extra responsibility to make sure these kids were learning, because how dumb would I look if I'm the teaching, I'm the principal, and the kids aren't getting the results? So I didn't know what to do. So I hired a speech pathologist because I figured they would know what to do. So she came on board, and she was just absolutely brilliant and explained to me what phonological awareness was, how you would go about teaching it, how we're meant to be doing that every day, how it's such an important skill as a pre-skill for reading. And then she introduced me to Little Learners Love Literacy. That was her recommendation for us. And she said, if you really want to do this, I need this much budget. These are the things I'm going to go and buy. So I just approved all of it. She then went into classrooms and modelled for our teachers, and I was watching every step of the way. She observed us teaching it and was giving us feedback on our teaching. She started with us 1 day a week. I think I got her 2 or 3 days a week by the end of it, because I just needed her knowledge and her help with everything. We were only a small school. I think we had 35 students there, but I just wanted the best for all of them. I didn't want any kids to be left behind. And that was sort of how I started in it, and got that. Her passion was passed on to me, and then I'm trying to pass that passion on to other people. So yeah, that's sort of really how I got started in it. And that school now has 75 students, and they're at capacity and can't take any more. So when I got there, there were 12 year sixes. They were about to drop to 18 students the following year, and they were freaking out the school was going to close down. And now and I think it's just that word of mouth that what we were doing was working for the students, and now they're at capacity and going strong. And I just think same thing will happen for most schools once they pick up on this and spread the word of what they're doing. But for me, moving away from maths was definitely being influenced by a speech pathologist.
Kathleen would be smiling there and nodding at that. And I think that was a big learning for me when I first sort of started on my journey, was how much knowledge there was. Pam Snow makes a comment as a professor of speech pathology. She says that she feels like at some stage the education sector put all this knowledge out on the footpath, and a speechy walked past and went, oh, well, if you don't want it, we'll take it. And it somehow just sort of merged its way into speech pathology degrees a little bit more than education degrees, probably where it should be. And it's nice that we can marry that up together. And you touched on, there's lots of questions coming in, but you touched on also, which fascinates me too, what a contested space this can be and how emotive it can be. And I've been on the end of some of that too. And I know you have, because I've watched that as well. And for whatever reason, reading in particular is really emotive. And some people feel like by looking at it like this through a really research informed lens and a scientific lens rather than a personal love heart lens, we're somehow making it less enjoyable or not damaging children, but taking the love out of it. And I think that's, for whatever reason that happens, it's just unfortunate, because this is about, you showed us that big picture data and also your lovely hot fine-grained phonemic awareness and also your fluency data. But behind every number is a child, and that's what this comes back to. And our children's right to leave our schools literate, and that is their right. So that is really inspiring. So let's have a quick look at some questions. So, and people can unmute themselves to ask, absolutely. We're all very friendly and relaxed here. Well, this is an interesting one, and I'd be interested in your thought around this, Greg, around developing documents yourself or sharing scope and sequences, because someone's asked if yours can be shared. I've got a little thought about that, having done that before, having worked like you. I've worked in a couple of schools where we've come on this journey together. There is something about working on those together that it is really good to look at in other schools, and you've been very generous and shared an example of yours. But yeah, developing those together. But what's your thought around that?
Yeah, and it all depends on where staff are at too. So normally I'd be a massive advocate for do it as a staff. And if you're a big school, you could probably do that. We're a small school, staff already feel like they've got enough responsibility, enough on. So as a leadership team, there's 4 of us, which some of my leadership team are classroom teachers, but they want to be in leadership. So we've made a little team. We put them together ourselves. It's just the time it takes if we're doing it as a whole school. I felt like it wouldn't have got done before next year, and I really wanted them to be done next year. The ones that we created are more of an outline. The teachers would then put them into their weekly planners themselves. I guess as an example, I made 6 of those 8 scope and sequences, and I made them all before anyone else handed me the ones they were doing, and they only had 1 to do. So I have that passion and want to get it done, and then everyone else I felt like was going a bit too slowly for me. But in a bigger school, I feel like we could distribute that amongst everybody, but I guess for my context is a little bit different. Not everyone had that buy-in straight away. Not everyone's as passionate. So I think they want it done for them at my school.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's
your staff were on board, like they were wanting to take that. It can be tricky when you pass something over completed to somebody who's not quite on board yet, because you're not then.
And we would go through our scope and sequences. If I was to pinch it off another school and just hand it to somebody, it wouldn't have the same meaning. We've all gone through all the training, so it's not going to be brand new to them. It's just going to be structured in a sequence for them.
Yeah, sure. Someone's asked a question around developing your morphology and etymology scope and sequence. Did you use the sequence out of Spelling Mastery?
No, we didn't. Yeah. I think that was the classroom teacher that put that one together, and it was very complex when it was handed to me, and I sort of brought it back down to a manageable 1-page document. It wasn't directly linked to Spelling Mastery. Because we started Spelling Mastery in grade 3 and we wanted it to start from prep. But I'm trying to think where it was linked to. I can't think where it was linked to, but we did it from somewhere because we chose, it was from the Word Cracker PD that I went.
Yes.
From Bill Hansbury.
So that's a Bill Hansbury one for people who are listening, and we shared, there are a couple of opportunities to do that, and I'd love to get him to Ballarat, Greg, like he does really good PDs on dyslexia.
It was really good. It was the first time they'd done it remotely because we were supposed to be there in person. And it was a recording, and he would stop the recording and jump in. So it was almost the same feel, but that's where we got our morphology scope and sequence from him. So we've started using that. We've started using that too.
Because
he's got a big magnetic board that's really handy to use in the classroom too.
Yes, very engaging for the older students. I think my teachers have found. Why do you use Kilpatrick from year 2 and not use Hegarty all the way through? I can nearly answer, using the new Hegarty extended curriculum. I was going to say I didn't realise there was one of those. So is there any reason why you guys just bought Hegarty F1, 2 and then Kilpatrick?
We used Hegarty Prep to 2 this year. And I know they've got a Bridge the Gap one, which I think is for intervention beyond grade 2 from what I get. I didn't know there was one all the way through.
No, neither did I. I only knew about bridging the gap.
We just found using it grade 2, we thought we could use the past assessment, which we were using beyond grade 2, and link it to the 1-minute activities, because Hegarty is kind of a 15-minute activity, and we thought that would be too long with our 3 to 6s to sit there for that long. Whereas the 1-minute activities, we can really target at their exact level that they're at. And if in grade 2, if we do it for the full year, we think that there won't be too many kids still needing it beyond there. And it will be just used for intervention. That was our thinking.
Yeah. What's your thoughts? I'm just going to throw in a question there. So there's a bit of disagreement in the science of reading community about the need for a separate phonological or phonemic awareness program. You guys are obviously continuing with that. So there's a thought that if we're doing that, the whole purpose of doing that is to eventually link graphemes to phonemes. So why not do that right at the start? But you guys are obviously going to continue with a separate phonological.
Yeah, and I have seen a lot of the new research coming out linking the graphemes to your phonological awareness. Yes,
Yeah.
I have seen a lot of that. We're going to keep going with what we're doing because it's working. We've got the data showing that. But if the science is there and it changes, then we're all for changing with the science as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Next one was around spelling mastery. At the moment, you're separating students into different groups, and then you said next year they'll be on the book for the year level. The reason for that change?
It's a risk. Even we got our grade 2s to start using it just as a trial, and they were in groups A, B, C, D, E, just our grade 2s. So there's a huge range, and it's just a matter of staffing. You need a staff member for each of those groups. The reason we're going to change is because after visiting Bentley West, so backtrack a little bit, we did it from grade 3 to 6. We had one student in the whole school make it to level F. So she was on her own, the only student who got to F. At Bentley West, they had their grade 4s all doing level F. So they are streets ahead. And the way they did it was by following the sequence. Everybody does A in, I think it was prep there. I might be wrong. And then
I think B's a year 1 book.
Yeah, so then they did B, C, D, and
can't remember.
Yeah, so they went through the whole class learning it together rather than separate the kids across different groups. And I guess you've got the whole arguments of there's grade 6s that are in a group with a grade 2 because we're a small school, we can't really get around that. And how's their morale going to go? There's those questions too. So we just thought following it from the start all the way through, we should bring most of the kids just like they have, and they're an exemplar school. It's worked for them, so let's try it.
They talk about, and a few other sort of, people we follow in this field talk about differentiation by support rather than differentiation by curriculum. So if that's the year 4 curriculum, let's help our kids meet it. And that might be an ES sitting between them, and instead of doing every question, they do 3, but they're still hearing that grade level and being involved in that grade level curriculum rather than, because we know if we differentiate so much, they'll never catch up. The idea is that catching up. Great response. Quickly looking, everyone's saying really nice things about you, Greg, which is good. Skills literacy block taught to grade level or skill level. So when you're developing that, is that a year 1 skill level, or if you got, different?
We teach it to the grade level.
Yeah.
So we follow the scope and sequence. So and I guess you can differentiate by, they've got their whiteboards out. We use explicit direct instructions. So you would get those kids who are higher ability to do that little bit extra of a task while the kids are doing theirs. So yeah, we tend to stick to the scope and sequence. That'll be the plan. Yeah.
And we're experimenting with that a little bit with, just a couple of extension questions there. Yeah.
Skills like for fluency, if they're a higher level pairing, they would have a higher level text that they're reading as their fluency passage than the other kids. So you can always differentiate everything, but we try to just do all the big 5 or big 6 in that skills block.
Yeah. 2 questions here about parents. How did you get your parents on board?
Yeah, it wasn't too hard. I think we put everything in the newsletter. We've shared our Facebook page. A lot of it is science of reading links. I link any presentation that I'm doing to the Facebook page. A lot of the parents will watch those. I did one recently for Decodable Readers Australia about how to get your parent community on board. You can find it on YouTube. Just a lot of our ideas are from that, but just everything on our Facebook page, in newsletters. We share what we're doing so they know exactly what we're doing. We share why we're sending decodables home and not the books they've been used to coming home with. We share our NAPLAN results. We talk about it all the time. So it's just, they're all on board because they can see what's happening. And then because we've got a lot of the science of reading community have jumped on our Facebook page, they're making a lot of comments that our parents are seeing. So they're saying, I watched your presentation, or I've read your blog, and then the parents are sort of going, what's going on there? And they're reading about it too.
Yeah.
But for the
I've
most
noticed
part,
that
they wouldn't know.
your parents are really proud of your school. Like they're
Yeah.
really great advocates for your school. Yeah.
Yeah, they wouldn't know there was a reading war because they've probably never had it shared with them how we teach reading. So they just have gone with what's been sent home. If we've sent home PM books, that's what they read with their kid.
Yeah.
If they can't read it, they've just sent it back and said, my child's struggling. Whereas we're now sending home word lists, decodable readers, the kids can actually read to their parents.
Yeah.
And we explain, here's a PM book, you read that to them. We don't expect them to read that.
The other thing, Greg, I know you've said before that, well, like me, you know, you're really passionate, and some people would say obsessed with reading, but you equally highlight writing and maths at your school, so your parents don't think, yeah, your school's only about this one thing. I know you've done that really well too.
Yeah, it is a balancing act. In the newsletter, we put a big write-up of what we do for reading in 1 week. The very next newsletter was what we do for writing, and the very next newsletter was what we do for maths. And we promote all those other things. I'm still a maths geek by heart, so I still push all those things and everything. But I guess science of reading is at the forefront for our school. That's where we have our reputation now. But obviously, we're still doing good things behind the scenes. I'd love to run a webinar on what we're doing in maths, because I think our maths is really, really high level as well.
Yeah, that'll come, I reckon. Parents and some thank yous, and I have another question about Kilpatrick, about how do they select the Kilpatrick drills to ensure they're catering for the range of abilities in their classroom?
Yep, so we have a spreadsheet like the one you saw that had the dark green, and as that would, you'd have yours of your class, and you would just have a look for where the most red was in the column, wherever that first one. So I know in grade 6 level J was the first really mostly red column, and that was substituting a sound in the middle of a word. Trying to think of an example. So maybe needle, change the E to oo, so it's noodle. A lot of the kids were struggling with that. So they did their 1 minute activities. There's 20 lessons worth of 1 minute activities in each chapter. So there's 20 1 minute activities for level J. So they might do that for a week because all the kids were struggling. So they probably hear 10 to 20 lessons on that. And then they've got it, they've nailed it after that. Then we move on and we look for the next one, which I think K1 and K2 were quite easy for the kids. Then level M, L and M were the harder ones. So then we just went straight to those levels. I did the same thing, and it's just the constant reviewing. So in their daily review, they'll go back and do some level J every couple of days, but they'll also then focus on the other levels.
Using that, really using that data to what their kids in front of them.
You have to know where the kids are at. Yeah, it would be a struggle without all the data.
Yeah,
awesome. But they're really quick assessments. They don't take long.
Yes. So, and I think, unless anyone, I'm sure there's some people dying to unmute themselves and ask a question. Lots of people, like you've said, starting in F1-2, and in my experience, that's what we've also done, and you get that buy-in down there and share your data. And I loved your 9 stages. That was really, I think, really manageable for people. And even that little challenge for me when you said about asking why, and when you shared that you've changed your literacy block and doing some things after lunch, I was just thinking, of course, you know, we need to think about everything that we do in the school day and how to make those evidence-informed things happen rather than just being bound by, what has been a traditionally...
You should see the pushback I'm getting on that one.
Yeah.
I've had unions called, my boss called, what are you doing in your school?
Okay, all right. Well, maybe you've got a little bit of way to go with that yet, but
it's just change. Everyone's scared of change.
Yeah, but just think, because one of the things in my experience has been, just that thought of how do I fit all of this in, and what is the best use of our time, and where can we strategically buy some time, particularly in that F1-2 area, because if we don't let that tail develop, we won't have that huge need for intervention later on. That, it should pay off later on.
That's the whole saying. If you've got your tier 1 going really well, you don't need tier 2 and tier 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else want to unmute and ask a question while we've got Greg here? And I just hats off to Greg. How he can just speak as a principal, speak to everything that is happening in his school and talk about, you know, what's happening in those Kilpatrick drills. A lot of us try and stay on top of everything, but no, your knowledge is very
And homeschool this monster that doesn't want to do his work.
Yeah. Homeschool dad, you are.
One of the emails that came through is his teacher. Levi didn't do any work today.
Anyone want to unmute and ask Greg a question? Because and again, a huge huge journey in 5 terms, really, isn't it, for a school to
that's that 9 stages I put in there. You could look at that as 2 years worth of work. You don't need to rush that at all. You want to get everyone understanding why they're doing it and then how to do it.
Yeah. Actually, Greg, something I was going to ask you super quickly is something I found really helpful is to have that model of reading, whether it is the reading rope or the simple view, that is a depersonalized sort of model. Do you have something that you have an agreement about this is how reading develops?
Yeah, we have a policy at the school. So, we created a policy on that everyone must be teaching this way. You can't be that teacher that's still doing PM readers in your classroom and sending the wrong books home.
Yeah.
So that's an agreement across the school.
Yep.
Yeah.
And a model of reading in terms of the simple view or the reading rope, or you talk about the big sit. I think you talked about.
Yeah. So we have a big display of Scarborough's reading rope in our.
So it's the reading rope.
Yeah. So I guess we started with the bottom of the rope.
Yep.
We looked at all the skills and the word attack sort of stuff and high frequency words, and then now we're looking at the top of the rope where it's around background knowledge, syntax, all of that sort of stuff. So we're trying to address that top part of the rope now, because I feel like the bottom part of the rope is a lot easier to do in activities.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I know I've gone very quickly in this presentation because I've done so many. I didn't want to start at the very bottom and explain what phonemic awareness is. I assume most people in the group have done their own research into all this stuff. If you're on the Facebook page, you've obviously got an interest in it. But
yeah,
there are other presentations I've done that are online. If you really want to start back at the start, I've done some presentations on all of the Dibels assessments and how they work and what data each of them will give you. I've done presentations on how to integrate teacher aids into the tutoring program.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So should we just Google you on YouTube? I've seen you've got Think Forward Educators. Did you do one for them?
Yeah, I did one for Think Forward Educators. Yeah. So I try to do a different one each time. I wasn't sure where to pitch this one at, but there's also the blog if you want to see our exact journey from the start and where my thinking came from and what inspired me. It's all in there as well.
Yeah, I shared that a couple of times. It's a really good read, especially for principals. Yeah. Does anyone else want to ask a question while Greg's here before he has to go and chase up with his son while he didn't
cook dinner and force him to do
log in for his classes today?
Yeah.
No, lots of smiles. No one wants to go because they don't want to miss anything, but a few people have had to log off. Great, thank you. We have recorded that. Well done, Kathleen. And that's, again, very generous of you to give your time, and also, of course, everything's shared through the recording. So we've got, copies of things there that we can have a look at again, and certainly one I think a lot of people will be sharing and having another look at again. Yeah. Me too, definitely. And I love the monkeys thing.
Yeah, I just found that and thought it just reminded me of my stuff.
Change is hard in schools. Change can be hard for people.
The amount of times I was told, we've always done it this way, stop changing things.
Yeah. I think if we bring it back to, again, how reading happens in the brain, we've all got the same brain. We actually all learn to read exactly the same way.
So my talk at Australian Teacher Aid was all about that.
Yep.
How we learn to read and the science behind that.
Yeah. And once you get your head around that and understand that, the decision-making process becomes really easy. It becomes about how can I get every word to be a sight word, and that's through orthographic mapping. We have to map.
There's a good video. I think it's called The Purple Book.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a good one that you can all watch. It's probably a 15-minute watch, but it's a good one too.
Yeah. Yep, fantastic. Okay, everybody, 5:36. You've done a great job. And we've got our next one, we're squishing in 2 this term, aren't we, Kathleen? I'm just looking at you thinking we're November the 11th.
Yeah, with Steph.
With Steph. Yep. And hers, yeah, talking about reading comprehension. So very lucky to have all these people come on board, and we will share this recording, and we've got the recording of the last one, which was fantastic, our local people, and seeing all these fantastic local people around the screen. Keep in mind, next year we're looking for more like local stories to share. I'll be emailing some of you to ask you to be presenters next year, because it's great. Shay's smiling. It was good, Shay, wasn't it? It wasn't nerve-wracking at all. Yeah, no, it's good for us to learn from each other. Thank you again, Greg. We'll let you go.
No worries. Thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that was fantastic. Sarah, you just said, where's the